Detachment isn't coldness, it's direction. They said he turned cold, dark, detached. But what they never saw was the heat that burned first, the loss, the fear, the grip so tight it cracked his own spine. Anakin didn't fall because he stopped feeling. He fell because he couldn't stop. That's what happens when emotion leads. It drags, it consumes, it blinds the man until he can't tell love from obsession, peace from silence, attachment from control. The Stoic moves differently. He feels, but he doesn't follow. Because detachment isn't the absence of care. It's the discipline to not be directed by what doesn't stay. People change, moods swing, situations collapse, but the one who endures isn't the loudest. It's the one who knows when to step back and when to disappear. Not to run, but to return to the part of himself that doesn't need fixing. Just distance. This is not escape, it's precision. And tonight, you learn it. Step back to see straight. When you're inside it, you can't see it. The drama, the chaos, the noise disguised as urgency. It feels real. It feels right. It feels like you have to react. But the Stoic doesn't respond from inside the storm. He steps out, steps back. Because perspective doesn't come from passion. It comes from position. Distance reveals what emotion distorts. That what feels personal often isn't. That what feels permanent isn't either. So when it gets loud, when your chest tightens and your mind speeds up, don't fight, don't feed, don't explain, just move back. Not to escape, to observe, like a soldier stepping off the battlefield to see the map. Not the mud. That's how detachment begins. Not with rejection, but with realignment. Because you don't need to be right in the moment. You need to be clear after it. And clarity never lives where you're too close to breathe. You don't owe connection to everyone. Some people get too close, not because they deserve to be, but because you forgot that boundaries are built, not assumed. The Stoic doesn't confuse access with entitlement. He gives carefully, chooses who sees what, when, how deep. Because not everyone you care about is safe for your silence. Not everyone who listens understands what they hear. And distance isn't cruelty, it's clarity. The right people don't need to be chased. They know how to meet you where your peace lives. The rest, let them wonder. Let them feel the space. Let them think whatever fills the silence you left. That's not your concern. You weren't made to be emotionally available to every passing energy. Your attention is currency. Your openness is a door. And the Stoic doesn't leave it unlocked, just to seem kind. So if you feel the need to pull away, do it. Not with noise, not with explanation, just with the quiet knowing that the ones who matter won't call your distance disrespect. They'll call it discipline. Share selectively. Vulnerability isn't power. If it's given to everyone, some truths lose shape the second they leave your mouth. Some thoughts need to sit inside you a little longer before they're strong enough to stand on their own. But most people, they spill too soon. They confuse connection with exposure, as if being open automatically means being understood. It doesn't. The Stoic knows what's shared too freely stops being sacred. So he speaks with precision, not to impress, not to offload, just enough to stay honest, but never hollow. Because when everything's spoken, nothing is protected. And what's protected grows. So next time the urge comes to let it all out, pause. Ask, does this need to be heard or just held until it's ready? You don't owe your insides to anyone who hasn't earned the right to carry them without shaking. That's not distance. That's discernment. Limit the room feelings can occupy. Feelings are guests. They knock, they enter, but they were never meant to take the whole house. The Stoic doesn't suppress, he contains. He lets emotion speak, but not command. He feels the rise, but doesn't drown in it. Because once feelings take the wheel, logic gets pushed to the trunk. And the mind loses its edge, trying to keep up with a heart that won't stop expanding, so he builds boundaries, internally. This thought can come in, but only this far. This feeling is welcome, but not in the driver's seat. It's not detachment from humanity, it's protection of function. Because when emotions run unchecked, you say what you don't mean. You attach where you shouldn't. You expect what no one promised. And that is how you fall. Not from lack of love, but from lack of limits. So when you feel it swell, pause, breathe, build the wall gently, with space for the feeling to visit, but not live. Because even your favorite emotion can become poison if you never ask it to sit down. Let the heart speak, but let the mind decide how loud it gets. Think past the moment. The moment feels massive, sharp, loud, like everything depends on how you respond right now, but it doesn't. The Stoic knows, impulse isn't clarity, and urgency is rarely truth. So when the pull comes, to reply, to react, to defend, to explode, he waits. Not because he's numb, but because he's trained to think beyond the frame. This will pass. This won't matter in a week. Is this worth carrying when the feeling fades? That's not detachment. That's wisdom. Because the self that survives you is the one that moves from intention, not from injury. You don't build peace by always speaking. You build it by knowing when silence saves more than it hides. So next time it hits, the message, the tension, the spike in your blood, don't follow it. Breathe past it, zoom out, step off the stage. Because when you think past the moment, you protect the person you're still becoming. And that version of you deserves better than whatever your ego wants to win right now. The crowd isn't your compass. Everyone has a voice now. A take, a thread, a reel telling you how to heal, how to feel, how to let go. But the Stoic doesn't scroll for direction. He looks inward, not outward, because the crowd doesn't know your context, your capacity, your cost. It just reacts, fast, loud, temporary, and if you let it lead, you start detaching for attention, for aesthetics, for applause from people who don't sit with what you sit through. That's not detachment, that's performance. So unplug, not to isolate, to remember what's yours, your reason, your rhythm, your recovery. You don't have to share the process while you're still in it. You don't have to turn your pain into content. Silence is allowed, healing off-screen is allowed. The crowd wants clarity too early, but the Stoic values wholeness over speed. And sometimes, you don't need more input, you need less. So turn it off, turn inward, and find your compass where no one else can touch it. Return to what noise can't touch. When it's too much, the voices, the tension, the confusion of where they end and where you begin. Don't add more, subtract. The Stoic doesn't reach outward when everything feels unstable. He turns inward, back to what's fundamental: breath, posture, a slow walk, a blank page. Because there's a place inside that the world can't access, where likes don't matter, where judgment doesn't echo, where the noise has no key. That's where he goes, not to escape, but to re-enter as himself. You detach best when you remember what you're made of. Not titles, not roles, not relationships hanging by threads, but stillness, structure, a core untouched by circumstance. The Stoic rebuilds there, quietly, repeatedly, until even the pain loses its grip. This is your gravity, when connection breaks, when the situation shifts, when the people you trusted no longer recognize who you've become. You don't need them to. You only need to stay close to what they can't reach. The center, yours. Sometimes you stay by stepping away. You don't always leave because you're done. Sometimes you step back to stay true, to breathe, to keep from becoming someone the moment would rather you be. The Stoic doesn't vanish, he recalibrates, quietly, deliberately, because detachment isn't distance for the sake of ego. It's space for the sake of clarity. So if you had to pull away, let it mean something, not anger, not fear, just choice, to protect what's still forming, to respect what's no longer serving. Because sometimes, the most loyal thing you can do is leave before resentment forms, to step away so you don't step out of yourself. That's not avoidance, that's alignment. So breathe, walk, re-enter when you're whole, and if you don't, let the silence be your answer. Still, rooted, unmoved.